Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. In this video, I'm going to look at the weekend of March the 23rd and 24th, 2024. And my focus is going to be the full moon, which is on Monday. So, if you like, it's a preview of this full moon. And I just want to look at how this full moon might affect, us in general, and how it might impact certain individuals who, I can see. I've shown you the photographs of some of them on this thumbnail. The ones that came to mind is Bukele, the president of El Salvador. He's got Bill Gates, Nancy Pelosi, Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, and our friend Meghan. So those are a few people. The thing about this full moon that's interesting. Well, okay, I think it's an apulse eclipse. Apulse lunar eclipse. It's not a total eclipse, it's an apulse eclipse. So it's not exact, it's not absolutely exact. And this full moon seems to have relevance to some of the stuff going on in 1981. There are some people born in 1981 who represent a particular generation. Meghan is one of them. Another one is Bukele, the president of El Salvador. And so I am thinking about this eclipse. It picks up on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that was around in 1981. For example, Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, he was born, I think, on the day of a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I think at around 5 Libra. And so this eclipse is at 5 Libra. I'm not absolutely sure what the relevance of that is, and I'm not quite sure what the relevance of the fact that this eclipse picks up on what was kind of going on during the royal wedding. And I'm talking about the royal wedding in 1981 on July the 29th. Is that July, right? July the 29th, 1981. Of course, Meghan was born pretty close to the royal wedding. Not quite sure on the relevance of that, but still I will be exploring that. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for this weekend. So this is the weekend of the 23rd and 24th of March. So here's a chart for the weekend. This is set for midnight, the middle of the weekend, midnight on Sunday the 24th. So that's the position at midnight. The moon is in Virgo. So by and large, it's a moon in Virgo weekend. For most of us, that's how we can understand it. So it's more about details, we could say, the material environment, noticing that material environment, but also perhaps starting to be aware that this weekend is a little bit chaotic. The moon is moving towards an opposition with Neptune. So there's the moon in Virgo trying to be organized, trying to keep everything on the straight and narrow, trying to make everything everything as predictable as possible. Then it's moving towards that opposition to Neptune. So however hard we try, however well organized we are this weekend, things could still go a bit pear-shaped. But whether or not that's a disaster kind of depends on us. doesn't it? I mean, if we are really, really detailed and everything is organized down to, you know, down to, the absolute last detail, then we are asking for trouble. What we need is a bit of flexibility in the system. I think that is important, and that's especially the case on Sunday. So we do have to be a bit careful there. And, I should also say that, Mars is now in Pisces, really is in Pisces. I talked about Mars in Pisces on Friday, and the problem was that Mars was going into Pisces, and for many people listening on Friday, Mars actually wasn't in Pisces yet, but now for sure Mars is in Pisces, and so we've got something new to deal with. Mars out of Aquarius. Aquarius was this sign that there was loads of stuff going through Aquarius over the last few months. Okay, we've got Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto is still in Aquarius, of course, but we had these planets. We had Mercury in Aquarius. We had Venus in Aquarius. We had Mars in Aquarius. We had Sun in Aquarius a month ago, just over a month ago. But now all these planets are leaving Aquarius, and the final planet, Pluto aside, was Mars, and Mars is now left. And so Mars moving into Pisces does make things more emotional, does make people more emotional, does change the way some of us can be assertive effectively. Mars in Aquarius is a bit detached. Mars in Pisces is not detached. That's an interesting point. Is Mars in Pisces detached? On the surface, it's not detached, but the thing about Mars in Pisces is it can keep moving. It's like the tide. It's detached like a shoal of fish that can just go moving off in some random direction at its own will. It's collective will. And I suppose that's the thing about Mars in Pisces. It is about the collective and how we respond to the collective. And, for many of us with Mars in Pisces, the best way of getting things done is not to do it directly. We don't announce our intention. We don't put ourselves in a position where we have to argue about what we're going to do. I'm going to do this, and then someone says, well, you can't do that because of A, B, and C. Mars is in Pisces. It doesn't want to argue about what it wants to do. It just wants to have a feeling about what it wants to do, and then it goes ahead and does it, but in perhaps a slightly roundabout way. In some cases, maybe even a rather devious way. But that's Mars in Pisces. So I think it's just important to use the energies of Mars in Pisces. Mars is in Pisces, is in a water sign, but it's well placed in Pisces. Mars rules the water signs, at least in my reading of it. And so it's no bad thing that Mars is in Pisces. So going back to the moon on Saturday makes an opposition to Saturn. It makes an opposition to Venus as well. Yeah, well, overall it makes an opposition to the Venus-Saturn conjunction, which is still operational. I think some of us might find that our attempts to get things done are frustrated. On Sunday I was suggesting it might just be that just the whole chaos of the thing might be preventing us getting anything done. On Saturday it may be more about sort of being actively blocked. Certain people stand in our way, and they may raise objections. We may also be very aware of how people are dealing with their feelings. Saturn in Pisces can be about stuck feelings. It can be. It's a water. Saturn is in a water sign, but it's just like pools of mud. It's like one of the Crowley tarot cards relates to Saturn in Pisces. I think it's off the top of my head. It's either the 7 or 8 of Cups, but it's a very grey card with just puddles in it, and it's just stuck water, and it's just grey, rainy sky, and it's just mud. And so when dealing with people's emotions, it's just maybe about mud, and that's something we should perhaps try to be aware of. Still, the moon does make a trine to Jupiter on Saturday, so there is a way forward. I think if we want to get things done with that moon trine Jupiter, we need to be very down to earth. Just ignore the emotional side of things. Okay, we have to accept the emotional side of things, but we don't want to get sidetracked by it. Moon trine Jupiter, if we're down to earth, we're completely straightforward about things, then I think we can get results. Now, Sunday, yes, we do have this opposition between the moon and Neptune, but we also have a sextile between Venus and Jupiter. Venus in Pisces, sextile Jupiter in Taurus. This is actually a very good aspect. Venus and Jupiter are benefics. Venus is a lesser benefic. Jupiter is a greater benefic. Venus is actually in mutual reception with Jupiter. So Venus is in Pisces, is in a sign ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in Taurus, a sign ruled by Venus. So yeah, Venus and Jupiter are both strongly placed because of this mutual reception. So regardless of the problems caused by that moon opposition Neptune, Venus and Jupiter, the two benefics, are in a wonderful relationship. As you know, I sometimes like to be negative, but you can't be too negative, can you? With Venus sextile Jupiter, if you look in the right areas, you can find real happiness. Things can really work. Just focus on things that are stable. It's not about excitement, Venus sextile Jupiter, not least because Jupiter's in Taurus, Venus is in Pisces. These are quite stable energies. So if we do something that makes us feel comfortable, if we can surround ourselves with stable people, and if we can be constructive, the sextile, is a fortunate aspect. It is about being constructive, because the sextile represents 3 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6, because a sextile is a sixth of a circle. So the number 3 is about ease. It sort of relates to trines, for example. The number 2 is about conflict and challenge. So there's a bit of challenge there, unlike the trine. Trine is no challenge. With a sextile with a bit of challenge, but it's not an overwhelming challenge. It's just enough of a challenge to be constructive. So we can constructively deal with these two planets, Venus and Jupiter. We can constructively bring them together. And if the environment is right, we can do something pretty amazing. It may not seem amazing at the time, but it can certainly lay the foundations for the future. Now, on Sunday, the moon does go into Libra, but depending on your time zone. So it goes into Libra London time at 8:37 in the evening. So in Western Europe in the evening, there may be a change. Moon moves out of Virgo into Libra perhaps we become a little less concerned about material details. We might still be very concerned about social details. Remember, Moon in Libra is a very sociable place. And so it would be a good idea to to consider the social dynamic of things. So there is a bit of a change there, but we may feel that things are more harmonious, perhaps, with Moon in Libra, less focused on details. Now that's Western Europe, or certainly in London. Moon moves into Libra at 8:37. In New York, that's 4:37 in the afternoon on Sunday. In Los Angeles, it's 3:37 in the afternoon after lunch. So in the Americas, for the last part of the day, the moon is in Libra, and that's that does bring a bit of a change. And I think that for most of us, this is probably a fortunate change. But we should remember that the moment the moon moves into Libra, it starts to make an opposition to the sun in Aries. So the full moon is really starting to build up. There's a full moon on Monday, and I wouldn't want to go too far in terms of discussing harmony when you've got a full moon building up. So that may be relevant if you're in Western Europe, and particularly if you're in the Americas. If you're in Asia, Australia, New Zealand, don't worry about moon going into Libra. Moon is in Virgo all weekend. I should also be looking at the heliocentric position of the planets. I'm not saying I'm going to find anything. I'm just doing this as a matter of course. I think because I just think we should always keep in mind what's going on heliocentrically. Probably the main thing going on is that there is a trine between Mercury and Neptune. I just need to turn my phone off. That's just really bad when people call me in the middle of these videos and I have to just, have to start again, stop the video. It's just a real pain. Anyway, we won't be disturbed now. Mercury is, heliocentric Mercury is moving to a trine to Neptune. That is quite perceptive. We can pick up on things. Remember, this chart is from the Earth's perspective. From his sun's perspective, when we put the sun in the middle of the solar system. So Mercury is trine Neptune, and I think we can pick up on some quite high level stuff. And I think for many of us, our psychic abilities are going to be stronger than usual. But maybe it's like the collective's psychic abilities are going to be stronger than usual. We often think about psychic power in terms of individuals, but what about groups? Countries can have psychic abilities. They can pick up about they can pick up on what is going to happen next, and you can see it in their behavior. The group knows. And the group knows, and we can see that through its behaviour. So look at people's behaviour with that heliocentric Mercury trine Neptune, and I suppose we might also say going to the Earth. Just a reminder: the Earth is moving towards a trine to Mars. I don't really like using trines to midpoints, but I suppose if you're interested, the Earth is trine to Mars, Pluto midpoint. So I suppose you could say that if the Earth is trine Mars, Pluto midpoint, it may be a sense in which things happen easily. It's easy maybe not for people to assert themselves, but for governments to assert themselves. Because I think the heliocentric chart is more about the collective. So people can throw their weight around very easily, and perhaps people will give in to them too easily. So, look at how governments are behaving. I mean, we always have to look at how governments are behaving. So, so that's a heliocentric chart. And now we can go back to planet Earth, look at things from a heliocentric point of view. And I am going to look at the astrology. I'm going to look at the astrology from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for the weekend of the 23rd and 24th of March 2024. Aries, you continue to have to focus on material details. I mean, it is annoying, no doubt about it. This is not what you want to be doing. Aries, is a sign that is very action orientated. It likes to get things done. Wants to be able to take the initiative, and that's certainly something that may not be as easy as it usually is, at least on the surface. But perhaps you're taking the wrong view of what it means to take the initiative. Taking the initiative is not always about blasting forward with sudden, exciting ideas. If you're more subtle, you can still take the initiative effectively today. You just have to perhaps take things slowly and, well, of course, I'm talking about today. Sorry, it's the weekend. So this weekend, just take things. This weekend, take things slowly. With the moon in Virgo, look after yourself. That really is important. Virgo is a health-orientated sign, and Aries can burn itself out, and probably particularly on Sunday, Aries, you might feel overwhelmed. You might feel just exhausted. Perhaps you've been doing too many different things and you've just run out of energy, and that's all there is to it. But still, Aries, you're still thinking about the impact you can have, and your impact on the world around you. Because there are things going on in this world that do annoy you, and you're thinking, what can you do to transform the situation? Now, one person, one Aries, can't do very much, but that doesn't mean to say that you're not somewhat annoyed about the situation. I think you do have to be a little more relaxed. So that's what I would I would recommend. But there is a sense of responsibility, I suppose. And if something is wrong, Aries, then you've got to work out what you must do about it, because there are things that perhaps you feel need to be done. Now, from a material perspective, on Sunday, it does somewhat depend on your time zone, but there is a trine between Moon and Jupiter. Maybe more about Saturday. It depends on your time zone. It'll be on Saturday. It'll be on Saturday. The Moon trine Jupiter. That can work in your favour. The Moon's trine to Jupiter. It can allow you to sort something out I know it's a Saturday, it's supposed to be a weekend, but there is something you can sort out of a material nature. Now, on Sunday, late on Sunday, certainly if you're in the Americas and Western Europe, you're going to start to feel the build-up to a full moon. And that's because the moon changes sign. The moon moves from Virgo into Libra, and suddenly you can feel that things are perhaps moving to, I didn't say a crisis, but they're moving to a point where a decision has to be made. And that might actually relate to other people. Late in the weekend, almost as Saturday moves into Sunday, you become aware, perhaps, that you and other people don't get on, or at least don't get on about some things. So that might be a challenge for you, and you might be starting to see the truth about something, or even the truth about someone. So Aries, I'm not saying it's going to be a dramatic weekend, but I do think there's a lot going on, and I don't want you to feel that it's just all about you having to face the world on your own, because, one thing I should say is that Venus is sextile Jupiter, so Venus rules your 7th house, represents other people. Venus sextile Jupiter, there is someone you can benefit from, someone who is generous and kind and can help you in many ways. So don't exclude that possibility, and that should help deal with some of the weekend's rough edges. But yeah, that's it, Aries. Okay, not an exciting weekend, but I think there's enough going on to keep you busy. Taurus, you are quite creative, I think, this weekend. You've really got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe that you can make things happen, and in some respects, it might be a good idea if you're self-contained, because as I often say about creativity can be a solo activity, because if you involve other people in what you're doing, then you might find that they try to impose their views on you, and you just can't get anything done. And you have a clear idea about what you want to do, and I think that this relates to the fact that Jupiter is moving through your sign. Now, Jupiter is not going to stay in Taurus forever. At some stage, it will move out, and you could say, well, an opportunity might be lost. So you need to make the most of Jupiter being in your sign, and this weekend with the Moon trine Jupiter, this is a weekend for exercising your creativity, for being positive in your own way, and not having to worry about what other people are thinking. We all have our individual paths to excellence, and we can't allow someone else's path to interfere with our path. We've got our own set of goals, which really does need. This set of goals does need to be respected. Venus also sextiles Jupiter. This is actually a very important aspect, and because Venus sextiles Jupiter this weekend, it can be great. Venus is in Pisces, it's in Jupiter's sign. Jupiter is in Taurus, which is Venus's sign. So they are in mutual reception. So the fact that Venus is sextile Jupiter in mutual reception to Jupiter means that, yeah, things can be really good for you today. It's a very lucky aspect, Venus sextile Jupiter. Once you're doing the right thing, Taurus, once you're doing something that is right for you, then I think that things can really work for you. So, what are you planning on doing this weekend? Try and do something special. As far as your social life is concerned, yes, it might be a good weekend for parties, provided you're in control. If you're with people, it's got to be on your terms. What you don't want to be doing this weekend is doing things other people's way. Doing things according to someone else's plans, because I think actually that would be a complete waste. Because what matters is you and your talents, your creativity, you bringing it all out into the open. Do have a strong sense of what you're on this planet for. Well, I suppose I should say something about relationships. There's no reason why relationships can't work very well this weekend. After all, there is a sextile between Venus and Jupiter. Sextile between Venus and Jupiter means whatever you put your mind to should work out, and that includes particular relationships. But there may be someone, perhaps someone very close to you, who's got issues. They may have a bee in their bonnet about something. They may think that their concerns are more important than your concerns. And their concerns might, as far as you're concerned, be completely irrelevant. So watch out for that. The right relationships can work out very well. But if you're dealing with someone who has strong opinions, then maybe this weekend, maybe you should avoid them. Gemini. I said on Friday that it may be time for Geminis to keep a lower profile. You need a bit of relaxation, perhaps. You can't be everywhere at once all the time, and so I think this weekend, spending some time on your own. You don't have to spend all the time on your own, but just knowing that you've got somewhere to bolt to. You've got your own bolt hole. It's always there for you, just in case you need it. I think that is going to be very important as you try to sort of navigate the weekend's challenges. Also, the moon does make a trine to Jupiter. And it's quite fortunate, this trine to Jupiter, especially on Saturday, and you are going to be most fortunate, most lucky when you're somewhere that you're familiar with, where you know the rules, where indeed they're your rules, and so that's another reason not to stray too far from home. But as I said yesterday, Geminis are attractive and charismatic at the moment. So if you were to completely isolate yourself this weekend, in a way that would be a shame. Because you have got something to offer. If you're with people, they're going to like you, and in a general sense, you're going to look good, and I think even feel good in sort of quite a physical sense. So yes, you have to make sure that people can hear you, perhaps see you. I mean, there is a difference, I suppose. People can hear you over the phone; they don't necessarily have to see you. But yeah, make sure there is a line of communication there. I just do think that is quite important. Now, I know it is the weekend, but you might nonetheless feel that your own sacred space is being challenged by external forces. This is particularly the case if you're working over the weekend, or if you're on call for whatever reason. If people are getting in touch with you because they want you to do something, then there are going to be irritations to manage. You can't just tell people that you can't do something because it's a weekend. Remember, the moon is making an opposition to Saturn. That Saturn does represent responsibility, and responsibility is coming from the outside world, from society at large. It could be clients, it could be employers, it could be other organizations that you think should have shut up shop for the weekend but haven't shut up shop for the weekend. So be aware of those challenges, and I don't think you can just put the phone down. I do think that these kind of challenges, you do have to deal with them and make some effort to engage. Cancer. Well, I think you're trying your best to engage with the world around you. You're a fairly effective communicator, I think, especially on Saturday, because on Saturday we have got a trine between the moon and Jupiter. So, the moon is your ruler, and it is trine Jupiter. And as a result of this trine, you're going to have, there's going to be something about you when people actually get in touch with you, when people are around you, that is quite, you're going to be quite enthusiastic. You can make people feel good about themselves. Of course, what really matters, surely, is you feeling good about yourself. And I do think you can feel good about yourself, provided things happen on your terms. Remember, the moon is in Virgo for most of the weekend. So the moon in Virgo is about things being properly organized, in the right place. Yeah, you are going to have a clear idea about the way you want things. On Saturday, that should be okay, and I think things can happen on your terms. Though I suppose a couple of people might be a bit distracting. Yes, the moon is trine Jupiter, which is great, but it is also opposition Venus at the same time. So that can represent too much of a good thing. Venus opposition, moon opposition Venus. Perhaps getting involved with something that seems amusing, seems fun, but then you get sidetracked by it. You waste a lot of time, you waste a lot of resources, you perhaps even waste a lot of money. So Cancer, bear that in mind. Be generous, but don't be too generous. I think that's it. I think there's a certain temptation for Cancerians to be over generous, particularly on Saturday. You can be a bit generous, that's good, but don't be over generous. As you move into Sunday, the moon starts making an opposition aspect to Neptune. This can be a little bit confusing for you. You have your careful ideas, you've sorted everything out, it feels like you've sorted everything out, but then then I don't know, things just happen. Your plans get disrupted. Maybe on Sunday there's just a lack of respect, not just some people, but just from a universe at large. I know it sounds strange that the universe might disrespect you, but perhaps the universe has other ideas. So you have these careful plans, and then it all becomes a bit difficult, and you have to keep changing your plans, and that's really not something you want to be doing. Now, depending on your time zone, the moon does change sign on Sunday. If you're in Western Europe, it's on Sunday evening. If you're in the Americas, it's Sunday afternoon. This sign change, it's not relevant if you're in Australia, New Zealand, not really, or if you're in Eastern Asia or the Middle East, really. But so it's more about Western Europe and the Americas. But if you are in Western Europe and the Americas, and perhaps Africa, then the moon moving from Virgo to Libra, it's not so much about the fact that the moon is in Libra. It's the fact that the moon is now starting to apply to a full moon. It's becoming full. We've got an apulse eclipse on Monday. So moon in Libra, sun in Aries, yeah, that's the full moon. That's the apulse eclipse. As a Cancerian, you are sensitive to the lunar cycle, and so this full moon can remind you of certain conflicts. I mean, we all have to deal with conflicts, but you may feel on one hand, yes, your own security does matter. You need to have both feet firmly on the ground. But on the other hand, there are pressures from the outside world that really can't be resisted. And so as you move into the full moon, and I'll be talking more about it on Monday, you will be feeling this tension. And I think under those circumstances, it's just important that you look after yourself. That's always important when you've got a full moon, or indeed a new moon for Cancerians, because, as I said, Cancerians are very sensitive to the lunar cycle. Leo, you are this weekend very creative, very talented. So it's really important that you don't doubt yourself. There are things you can do that are really special, and I think that they are connected with you. They're not about someone else. We may be talking about art. We may be talking about writing, painting, music, whatever you're good at. It's important that you give it your best, and it is a weekend. Hopefully, you're not having to worry about too much about work and responsibility. You've got time for yourself. So even if you don't think that you've got a talent, you actually do. You do actually have a talent. It is very real, but maybe it needs to be. You need to sort of up it a few levels. Maybe, perhaps you've got a talent that you've known about, but in the past you've maybe used it in the wrong way. You've perhaps been a bit repetitive about it. That's the thing about having an ability or a talent. We can have an ability, a talent, some special skill, but we just get used to it. We just use it in the same old way. We don't use it in different contexts. We don't learn anything more about it. We kind of take the view, well, we had it sorted out years ago, decades ago, so why change? Well, if you want to make the most of this talent I'm talking about, it's probably not enough just to use it in the same old way. It's something you're good at that needs to be used in a different context, can be used for different reasons, in different ways, perhaps presented to different people. And so, Leo, you have to show some flexibility and some imagination there. I do think that is really important. So that's one theme for the weekend. It's not the only theme. I mean, we mustn't forget that the moon is moving through Virgo. It is making a trine to Jupiter. That trine between the moon and Jupiter, which I think is exact on Saturday, from a material perspective, could actually be very useful. Now, I've said that it's important this weekend that you have time for your own creativity, to nurture your own talents, but it is not the only thing. From a material perspective, there are things you can do, especially on Saturday, that can make you feel sort of more secure. Something to do with money and work, might be money and or work. It depends on the situation. Might be very useful. Though I should point out that the moon is making an opposition to Venus. I know Venus is a nice planet. It's in Pisces. It's in mutual reception to Jupiter. But the moon opposition Venus for Leo, it can be a bit excessive, a bit overindulgent, and it can in certain cases be expensive. Just spending money on stuff that doesn't need to be, that really just doesn't have to be spent. That might be one way of looking at it. And then as you move into Sunday, the moon makes an opposition to Neptune. I think on Sunday, yes, money is important, but in another sense, it should probably be avoided. Certainly, the spending of money should be avoided on Sunday, and Sunday is certainly a bad time for making financial decisions. That is because the moon is making an opposition to Neptune. So, moon in Virgo is about Leo trying to make sense of its financial resources, and Neptune, the opposition, is just creating real chaos. So probably on Sunday, avoid things connected with money, and just be careful. I'm not saying Sunday is a bad day, by the way, not at all. It's a great day, but provided you don't get sidetracked. And I go back to what I was saying at the beginning of my Leo piece, that you've got to focus on what you're good at, but focusing on what you're good at, but in a new way, in new environments, in new contexts. Virgo. For most of the weekend, the moon is moving through your sign. Indeed, really for all of the weekend if you're in Asia, Australia and New Zealand. So in some respects you are familiar with everything going on around you. You've seen it all before. But there is a certain amount of sensitivity here. You shouldn't forget that the moon is moving towards an opposition of Neptune. That happens on Sunday. The moon is on Saturday is making an opposition to Saturn and Venus. So what happens out there in the outside world does have an impact on you. you know, even if you are trying your hardest to keep away from everyone, to keep a low profile, you can't shut out the outside world. I mean, your psychic senses are still working. And if you looked at, remember that heliocentric chart, from a heliocentric chart, remember heliocentric, not geocentric. From a heliocentric point of view, Mercury, your ruler, is making a trine to Neptune. Okay, not from a geocentric point of view. I'll just if you're looking at the screen, I'll just remind you of that. I'll just put up the heliocentric chart again, just to remind you. There's a heliocentric chart. There's Mercury, your ruler. Heliocentric Mercury, your ruler. Remember, the Sun is in the middle of the heliocentric system. So the Mercury, and there's Neptune. So Mercury is certainly trine your Neptune from a heliocentric perspective. And so that does make you sensitive. You are sensitive to what is going on around you in the world. You are picking up on things, and you cannot completely remove yourself from what everything going on. Well, you might like to. So we're back to the geocentric chart there. So people perhaps want you to do things. There is pressure. That does not mean to say that you have to give in to the pressure. You just have to be aware of the pressure. And I think also you have to keep in mind a set of priorities. Your number one priority should be to put yourself first. That's your number, obviously. And to put your inspirations first, to put your, whatever you're here on this planet for. Whatever you're here on this planet for over the weekend. You've not just got a purpose for your whole life. You've got a purpose for this whole weekend. I mean, we all have. But in your case, I think it is particularly strong. That is because, on Saturday in particular, the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. Jupiter is in Taurus. Jupiter's been in Taurus since last May. From a Virgo perspective, Jupiter in Taurus is all about inspiration. It's about having a philosophy. It's having a set of beliefs. It's about having a sense of a world which is larger than the world you're used to, expanding your horizons. That's what Jupiter's all about, and the moon is trine Jupiter, and that's what you need to be doing. But you can't do it to the exclusion of all else. You have to consider some of the pressures going on, and there are pressures. You can feel them, even if you've turned your phone off and you're not seeing anyone. It's still there, and it's probably going to be important to listen to what people say, but you don't have to do what you're told. That's not necessary. You just have to be aware of the demands being placed upon you. Again, you don't have to give in to them. And indeed, you may come to the conclusion that there are certain people you don't like. That's okay. And on Sunday, the moon is making an opposition to Neptune. Moon in Virgo making an opposition to Neptune in Pisces. At that stage, you have to be very careful with people, whoever they are, friends, family, lovers, whatever. They could cause a lot of difficulties for you. And I'm not talking about big arguments. If it was a big argument, it would be fine, because then you'd be able to just deal with the matter head on. It's more about being ground down, moon opposition Neptune. People just taking up a bit of your time, asking you questions, being there, you having to respond to them, and in the end you might just get completely exhausted. So I think as you move into Sunday, I think that your boundaries are going to be very important. But I'm not suggesting that you completely remove yourself from the outside world. On Sunday there is a sextile aspect between Venus and Jupiter, and that does have relevance to relationships. Jupiter rules Pisces, your opposite sign, and it is sextile to Venus. As far as I'm concerned, that means that the right person can do you the world of good. Libra. You might feel that it's a weekend of preparation. You could feel that something is happening. Something's happening perhaps behind the scenes, but not quite yet. So there may be a sense that you feel that you're waiting for something. There is always a problem if you feel that you're waiting for something, because if you are waiting for something, that might be a good excuse for doing nothing at all. And that would probably be a shame. Because if you're honest with yourself, there are things you really want to do. There are actually things you're angry about, and you're thinking, this isn't right, and it's time to get going on it. But it's not. But perhaps you're feeling, well, it's not really good time to get going on it, because I'm just going to wait a little bit longer. Just let the situation resolve itself. Then I'll take the action. But no, I don't think that's the right approach. If you feel that something needs to happen, then that's where it is. Something needs to happen, and you shouldn't underestimate yourself. From a Libran perspective, the main aspect this weekend is a sextile between Venus and Jupiter. So Venus is your ruler. Venus rules Libra, and it's sextile Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune. And Jupiter and Venus are in mutual reception, because Venus is in Pisces, which is a sign ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is in Taurus, which is a sign ruled by Venus. They're in mutual reception. That does make you very fortunate. Now, you might not feel fortunate, but all things being equal, I think you are fortunate. And, most things that you put your mind to should work extremely well. Now, you might think, no chance, this is not going to work. But if it's right for you, then I think you will quickly see dividends. So don't doubt yourself, but don't feel that you have to act in a gung-ho way. You can take action this weekend without being seen to take action. Perhaps you have to do it in a sort of a slower way, not taking direct action, perhaps more in accordance with the fact that Mars is now in Pisces. I know that Mars doesn't have a direct impact on you, but perhaps with Mars in Pisces, that's showing you how best you can take the initiative this weekend. Being methodical, yes, being focused a little bit on the details, but also being ready to change your tack at very short notice. So if you can change your tack at very short notice, then that does put you in a really strong position. You don't have to be seen and heard to make waves. Do consider that. Now, at the end of the weekend, the moon goes into Libra if you are in the Americas or Western Europe, in Europe in general. Sunday evening, Moon goes into Libra in Europe. Sunday afternoon, even lunchtime, if you're on the west coast of the US, the moon goes into Libra. Did I say sun going into Libra? Well, it's certainly the moon goes into Libra, not the sun. The moon goes into Libra. In other words, the moon goes into your sign. So in one sense, that's good, because you're feeling more in control. You feel that you understand what's happening. You feel that you're in the right place again. Because when the moon was in Virgo, you felt a bit unsure of yourself. And I think that moon in Virgo was one of the reasons why you might have felt that you wanted to hold back. You might have felt a bit indecisive. But now moon is in Libra, you might feel that now you're ready. Think that it's making sense. But the problem is that with the moon in Libra, it's starting to make this opposition to the sun. So late on Sunday, you might become aware of many of the things holding you back, and you might see that, as Sartre said, that hell is other people. It's people holding you back. But you're a Libra and you're a people person. It's not all people holding you back. It's some people. And as you move into next week, or as you move into Monday, Tuesday, the new week, you can perhaps start to address these problems and perhaps be a bit more discerning about who you spend your time with. Scorpio, you would like to be sociable, I think, this weekend. I think that feels right for you. But I think there are limits. If you spend too much time in a high social, in a high profile environment with people around you, I think that you would. I think you'd get pretty exhausted, and you might not just exhausted, but just having a sense of a sort of a lack of satisfaction, because there are certain people that can really bring you down, can bring you to a standstill, and if you're out there surrounded by people, some of those people are not going to be useful, and I think at some stage, or probably sooner rather than later, you're probably going to want to leave. For example, if you're at a party. So if you do go to any social gathering over the weekend, always keep in mind where the exit door is. Just so you know where it is. So that way you can quickly leave. I'm not saying you're going to have to leave, Scorpio, but you may feel that at some stage you want to leave. So possibly you have to sort of understand your limitations there, and don't commit large chunks of time, 6 hours, going to a 6-hour dinner party, for example. I don't think that would be a good idea this weekend. Okay, you may have already accepted the invitation, but that kind of event is going to would probably exhaust and irritate you. You just might feel that your fundamental self is just being blocked. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't benefit from people. I mean, this weekend, on Saturday, there is a trine aspect between the moon and Jupiter. Jupiter is in Taurus, your opposite sign. Moon is in Virgo, which from a Scorpio perspective is quite sociable. But that moon trine Jupiter I think is about one person rather than lots of people. It's like finding the one person who can make your weekend. So if you are socializing over the weekend, it's all about one person. It's not about a group of people. It's finding that one person who you can have a strong rapport with. And matters are helped by the fact that this weekend we have got a sextile aspect between Venus and Jupiter. Venus rules Taurus, and it is sextile Jupiter, which is in Taurus, and find the right person, and things can really move. And I know people come into these readings with all sorts of hopes, desires, requests. From a relationship point of view, if you're looking for a new relationship, that Venus sextile Jupiter is good, bodes well. So, all things being equal, I think that there's a good chance that you can find someone special, as they say, this weekend. You've got to make the effort, but if that's what you want, if you feel you need to find someone special, then I think this weekend you can be successful. And in this light, perhaps you should just take advantage of the sort of planetary energies. Mercury is aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. Mercury on a Venus-Mars midpoint is a general significator of smooth communication, being able to communicate in a way that is attractive and appealing. That applies to all of the 12 signs, but I'm just highlighting it for you because I think this weekend could be great for relationships and for meeting the right person. But don't meet the wrong people. That's really important, because there is a danger there. It's all about, I suppose, from a social perspective, sorting out the wheat from the chaff. But more fundamentally than relationships, this weekend should be about you. And we have a reminder here that Mars is in Pisces. So depending on your time zone, on Friday Mars did move into Pisces, but maybe you didn't really feel it. But now for sure Mars is in Pisces, and Mars is your ruler. Mars stays in Pisces until the end of April. Now, as Mars goes through Pisces, there are going to be things happening, some good aspects, some bad aspects, but overall, this period between now and the end of April is fortunate. Mars in Pisces for you, Scorpio, is very imaginative. It's about being creative, focusing on what you can do, and it makes you very effective, and it reminds you about how best you can assert yourself. And this weekend you can assert yourself as Mars starts moving through the first degree or two of Pisces. You can see how what the most effective method is. And as I say, with Mars in Pisces, it's not usually the direct approach; it's the indirect approach, which often rests heavily on effective use of emotions. And if you're a typical Scorpio, I think you know how to make effective use of your emotions. So, enjoy Mars moving through Pisces, because you've got it for a bit of time now, until the end of April. Sagittarius. It's going to be a good weekend, or at least it should be a good weekend. For a number of reasons. Most importantly, Venus is sextile Jupiter. So when I look at these forecasts of the 12 signs, I do focus quite heavily on the ruler of each of the signs, and your ruler is Jupiter. Jupiter's in Taurus. It's been in Taurus since May, and Jupiter at the moment is sextile Venus. And Venus and Jupiter are in mutual reception. In other words, they're in each other's signs. Jupiter is in Taurus, a sign ruled by Venus. Venus is in Pisces, a sign ruled by Jupiter. So that is wonderfully fortunate. Venus is a lesser benefic, Jupiter is a greater benefic. Things really can work your way. Now, I'm not asking you to have a crazy, super exciting Sagittarian weekend. It doesn't have to be like that. It's best if it's not like that. Jupiter is in Taurus, which is quite a staid sign. Venus is in Pisces. It's sort of gently receptive. So just take advantage of the opportunities around you, but you don't have to be crazy about it. It's not necessary to be crazy about it. In fact, it is not desirable for you to be crazy about it. Just gently take advantage of everything that is on offer, and a great many things are on offer, and you should find that the people you meet, the people you're with, they should be very sympathetic to your needs. So if there's something you want, gently ask for it. You probably don't even have to say anything. Even if you're not with other people, even if you spend the whole weekend alone, you can have a great time. You can be working on something, putting your energy into something. And when I say working on something, I don't mean that in a boring sense. Just doing something that you find really satisfying, because I think you're going to make excellent progress. Now, if you want to work this weekend, and I'm not saying you do, you're not working, or you're retired or whatever, but if you happen to be working this weekend, whether it's for someone or for yourself, then I think you can have a good time, because the moon in a high profile sector of your chart, Virgo, moon in Virgo, is making a trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter's your ruler, but particularly on Saturday. You can cover a lot of ground, and I think you will be effective and conscientious. One thing, though, don't let other people spoil the party. And I'm thinking in particular of your family and the people you meet in your own home. They could put a damper on things a little. So consider how your family are relating to you. Consider the demands that your family are putting on you. It's possible, for example, on Sunday, Moon opposition Saturn, that could be demands that you don't really want to have to deal with. You shouldn't be having to deal with, but you might feel obliged, and that could spoil things. Then Sunday, Moon's opposition Neptune. It's a bit different. You might find that things going on at home, you don't really understand what's going on at home. It's all a bit up in the air, but it just wastes a lot of time. So treat your home and family with a certain amount of caution, and do make sure that you're in control, and also make sure that you're not taken for granted. But that's just a warning. I'm looking at it from the worst possible perspective. I think in general, Sagittarius, with that Venus sextile Jupiter, it can be a really good weekend. Capricorn, you have some powerful things to say. You have opinions, and you want to tell people about what's on your mind. And it's true that the things you say can have a big impact. So I suppose the question is, how dramatic do you want to be? You can be very dramatic, but in the process, well, you might cause a certain amount of damage. Especially on Saturday, because on Saturday there is a moon. The moon is opposition Saturn. So Saturn is your ruler. So in a way, Saturn represents you, and the moon represents someone else. And so moon opposition Saturn can be about you bringing someone down to earth, you exercising your authority, and someone having to accept your authority, and possibly not being too happy about it. So Capricorn, do consider how you are occurring to other people, and do consider what kind of impression you're having. You don't want to be seen to be a spoil sport or even a bully. I'm not saying you're going to be a bully, but I suppose in extreme situations you might be regarded as being a bully, even if you're not being a bully. Or you could be regarded as a pain in the neck by some people. So try to consider how you are occurring. Because your words are strong, but they could be quite hurtful. But you don't want to be hurtful just for the sake of it. But I'm not saying that makes for a bad weekend. And perhaps if something is upsetting you, or you want to say something really negative, you perhaps need to take a step back and look at the broad picture. That is really important this weekend, to step back and look at the broad picture. You don't want to get sidetracked by trivialities. Easy to do with Moon in Virgo, but you don't want that to happen. You want to see the wider situation, and perhaps when you see things from a broader perspective, you'll realize that you don't have to say anything. You don't have to take people to task. You can let people run their lives in their own way, and no one is going to come to any harm. And also, Virgo, you've got to consider your own needs first, because even if you are criticizing someone or restricting someone's freedom, in a way they're restricting your freedom as well. If you get involved in someone's life, and if you try to be an authority figure in someone's life, you're doing yourself in. It may be self-destructive. We're perhaps reminded of the fact that the South Node is moving through Libra. And from a Capricorn perspective, South Node moving through Libra can be a suggestion that maybe the authority, Capricorn as the authority figure, is not the way to go. Libra is a high-profile sign from a Capricorn perspective, but the South Node is there. That's from the past. And so I suppose we might be thinking about a little bit of projection here. You trying to be critical of someone else, then maybe you should perhaps be focusing on yourself, and a bit of self-criticism might be in order. And by self-criticism, I'm talking about maybe the realization, Capricorn, that you might not have been making the most of your core abilities. It's something you perhaps have been underusing. And with today's trine between Moon and Jupiter, this weekend's, Saturday's trine between Moon and Jupiter, there's a reminder there that there's something you can do that no one else can do, and perhaps you should just go ahead and do it and not worry too much about what other people are doing or not doing, and not be too focused on other people's mistakes. And finally, I suppose I should say something about relationships. Well, as I said, Moon is opposition Saturn. From a Capricorn perspective, Moon opposition Saturn can represent a bit of tension in one-to-one relationships. And I think that might particularly be the case on Saturday. On Sunday, I don't think there's so much conflict, but you might still feel that you don't fully understand people. And if you don't really understand someone, maybe you shouldn't get involved with them just for the day, and just focus on what you need to focus on, which I think is, your own private interests, because there is, I think, a lot of work to be done in that department. I mean, work to be done in a positive sense, really making the most of everything that you are. Aquarius, you are possibly not in, the most extroverted mood. The moon, the moon continues moving through Virgo, and so, from an Aquarian perspective, moon through Virgo, Aquarius and Virgo are not signs that really work very well with each other. And so you might feel that your own private world is where you need to stay. And on your own, there is, you can do useful work, you can come to useful realizations, and you're helped by the fact that the moon is trine Jupiter. That trine between the moon and Jupiter is, in a way, quite private. It's a private realization that you are on the right track, that you're doing the right thing. And on Saturday, I think that can be something you feel. It's something that's not necessarily verbalized. It's just something you feel. And I think that you should probably resist any pressure, to be out there in the world. Besides, I'm not convinced that particularly on Saturday, you'd make very good company. Venus is moving away from Saturn. I think Venus, when Venus was conjunct Saturn, it did give a boost to your social skills. But Venus is moving away from Saturn now, and I think if people spend too much time with you, you might actually get them down. Again, I think especially on Saturday, and spend too much time with you, Aquarius, you might say things which are a little upsetting even. Okay, maybe not upsetting, but perhaps a better way to do it is sort of over-dramatic. You might make sort of over-dramatic statements which go down the wrong way, and in the end are in no one's best interest. So that really is another reason to keep yourself to yourself. And I don't think there's really much else to say. I think it's perhaps not the most interesting of weekends, though. If you are in the Americas on Sunday, there is a bit of a change. The moon does move out of Virgo. Okay, you'll feel this in Western Europe, Europe in general, on Sunday evening. But late on Sunday, the moon moves into Libra. You feel, I think, a sense of relief that things are suddenly moving again, and you'll find it easier to be optimistic, and you'll have a clearer sense of why you're doing what you're doing. And perhaps from a social perspective, you'll find it easier to communicate. But the trouble is that as soon as Moon moves into Libra, it starts making an opposition with the Sun. and the Sun is ruler of Leo, which is your opposite sign. So towards the end of the weekend, again, if you're in America and Western Europe, there is focus on other people again, but you're still aware of how you and someone else are different. So, okay, you might feel more comfortable with Moon in Libra, but still you're aware of challenges, and you're aware that you and other people are different. And the question is, how do you negotiate those differences? Sorry not to be more positive, but these readings are very short term. I'm talking about the weekend. Monday's another day. Pisces. Well, the good news, Pisces, is that Venus and Jupiter are making a sextile. Jupiter rules Pisces. So Jupiter is your ruler. And Jupiter is sextile Venus. So Venus is the lesser benefic. So this Venus-Jupiter sextile is really fortunate. And so, I'm confident that it can be a very good weekend. And, I'd like to say if it can go right, it will go right. I'd love to say that. But you have to ask yourself, what could spoil things? Well, maybe other people could spoil things. Even though Venus is sextile Jupiter, Venus is a planet very much connected with relationships, is sextile Jupiter. But there are a couple of people who are maybe asking too many questions, who are being a little bit critical. And I think those people should be avoided. But maybe they're just like mosquitoes. They might bite, but they're not going to do you any harm. They're the kind of mosquitoes that don't give you malaria. And with Venus sextile Jupiter, you can think positive thoughts and be with positive people. That's what you should be concentrating on. So perhaps you need to consider who you're going to be spending the weekend with. And it all, I think, needs to be on your terms. But you do need to be sufficiently sensitive to realize which people could mess things up for you. I think there's just one or two people, you just know that they're trouble. And maybe you can ignore them. Maybe you can have minimal contact with them. Just like mosquitoes. Mosquitoes needn't spoil things for you. Just irritations, and that's all they are. And also, Saturn is. Saturn does make an opposition to the Moon on Saturday, and it is a difficult aspect. But that difficulty may be about you, and it may just be that you can maybe be quite brutal in terms of getting rid of people that are annoying you. You can brush people off very quickly, very easily, because that's your Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces. And so I think that's another reason to think that you're really in quite a strong position. And that Venus in Pisces, it is about your sensitivity, and but that Venus sextile Jupiter, I think you'll also be quite lucky. So you can put yourself in a position where things can really work out for you. And as with relationships, it all depends. Relationships may not be the be-all and end-all, particularly close one-to-one relationships. Maybe that's not what the weekend is about. Maybe if you put too much focus on particular one-to-one relationships, that could actually spoil the weekend. You want to be in control, but gently in control. Remember, it's all about that Venus sextile Jupiter, which is really such a fortunate aspect. And Venus is about other people. And so, the right person can be really helpful. I mean, I've been saying that to a lot of the signs. It's all about making the right choices in terms of who you spend a weekend with. And it's just important that you are able to make the right choices. Towards the end of a weekend, if you are in the Americas, or particularly if you're in the Americas, it's great from Saturday lunchtime onwards, Saturday afternoon, the moon does move out of Virgo and into Libra. And that may not actually be a bad thing. I've talked about certain people being irritating, and that's really a lot to do with the moon being in Virgo, your opposite sign. So, for example, if you were on the west coast of California, Oregon, I don't know, British Columbia, then early afternoon, moon moves out of Virgo into Libra, and maybe that's just an irritating influence just disappears. If you're in New York, that happens a bit later. It happens, late afternoon on Sunday. If you're in Western Europe, you've got to wait till this evening. If you're in Australia, I'm afraid you've got to wait till tomorrow. So that does, to an extent, depend on your time zone. But overall, Pisces, that Venus sextile Jupiter is a really good aspect, and I really hope that you find ways of benefiting from it, because I think you really should. Okay, so I now want to look at the weekend from the perspective of the I Ching. And so I asked the question, what is the weekend going to be like for those watching the for those watching the I Ching section of this video. And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 40, deliverance. It's about being rescued or rescuing ourselves. We're in a bad situation. There's something bothering us. We're just wondering, how are we going to get rid of this thing? How are we going to get out of the situation? And this hexagram is telling us that we can get out of a situation. There is a way out. We can deliver ourselves. But the question is how? Well, the top line moves. And, there's a rather unfortunate symbolism that the I Ching uses with the top line, which is about a prince shooting a hawk on a battlement, shooting the hawk. Now, I don't know, I'm not into killing birds of prey. That's a terrible image, killing birds of prey. There was some recent news story about someone who killed, 3,000 bald eagles, or I don't know whether it's bald eagles. He'd killed 3,000 eagles, and he'd been selling their parts, and and I think he's going to go to prison. And it was a big case about that. So it's an unfortunate symbol, shooting a hawk. But the hawk represents someone who is evil, doing us no good. There is someone that's like that, someone standing on the battlement, someone watching over us who doesn't wish us well. Maybe a situation, it may be a person, it may be a group of people. They need to be removed. We need to find a way of getting them out of our life. And of course, the I Ching is telling us, yes, we can do it. So obviously, you don't go firing off arrows. You distance yourself from them. You just say goodbye to them, whoever it is. You say something dramatic which makes them go away. You offend them, then they go away. You must decide on this. You must decide how best to get rid of them in a legal and ethical way. But once they've gone, you will feel a great sense of relief, and then you'll be able to move to the next challenge. And the next challenge is represented by the next hexagram, because this top line moves, and that takes us to hexagram 64, before completion. Okay, we have got rid of a problem. We've distanced ourselves from a problem, but it doesn't mean to say that we've reached the far bank of a river. And, the image here is of a small fox trying to cross a river before completion. It's nearly there, but it's not quite there. And before it gets to the far bank, things can go wrong. It can get sucked under. It can just exhaust itself. So we need to be aware that we're not quite there yet. And so in that last bit before we get to the far bank, we need to be extra cautious. Perhaps we need to conserve our strength. We mustn't be distracted. We can get to the far bank, but it does require concentration. And so that's the weekend. There seems to be an opportunity to get rid of something, to deliver ourselves from a difficult situation by getting rid of it. And it may be that difficult situation relates to a person or a group of people. It could be an organization, something we're involved with. It could just be a state of mind. It could be on a completely psychological level. But yes, we can get rid of it, and then we can move on and continue with the challenge and having to get to the far bank. Are we going to make it to the far bank? I think we are going to make it to the far bank, but we have to be really careful, and we mustn't be stupid or get distracted right at the end, just when we think we're there. And now I'm going to look at Monday's full moon. Indeed, it's an A-pulse eclipse. So the A-pulse eclipse, we can tell that it's an eclipse because, let's look at the new moon, the full moon. Because this full moon, moon is at 5 degrees 7 Libra and opposition 5 degrees 7 Aries, because it's conjunct the South Node. When you've got a new moon, full moon, conjunct opposition with South Node, North Node, that means it's an eclipse. That's the node is where the path of the sun cuts the path of the moon. Isn't that right? It's something like that. And so we can tell that it's an eclipse. I think it may be an important eclipse, but perhaps the strength of the eclipse is not immediately obvious. And I know people go on and on and on about eclipses and full moons, and you might want to say how wonderful it is, how transformative it is. I mean, you might want to say, oh, moon in early Libra, trine Pluto, personal transformation, growth. We can find our true calling, whatever. I don't think that's really what it's about. I think we really need to drill into this eclipse to find out its core meaning. And the thing that strikes me about this eclipse is the fact that it is semi-square Uranus. that's the first point to make. This trine between the moon and Pluto, it's nice. For some of us, it can be about personal transformation, but it's not an exact trine. I wouldn't make a big deal about it. It's over 3 degrees off. I'm not particularly impressed by the fact that the moon is trine Pluto. I am more impressed by the fact that the sun is within less than half a degree of a semi-square with Uranus. And therefore Uranus is a sesquiquadrate the moon. So this full moon is of the nature of Uranus. It is about, I think, shaking things up. It's quite revolutionary. There's a certain sense of violence about it. Though, I suppose we've got this clash here between the sun in Aries and the moon in Libra. It's a very different thing. Sun in Aries is about taking the initiative. A moon in Libra is about compromise. So on a personal level, this might be an issue for all of us. When we get this every year, we get this Libra full moon. Do we just follow the line, or do we take the initiative? Which is easier? And I think, in terms of the world we're in, that's a problem for all of us. I think a lot of us we find that we're being gaslit by governments. Governments telling us to believe in things, and the easy option, moon in Libra, is to believe what the government tells us. The difficult option, sun in Aries, is to challenge what we're being told, and so that's an issue for us. And with Uranus semi-square the sun and Uranus sesquiquadrate the moon, it is revolutionary, but it is sun semi-square Uranus may be about authority figures doubling down, really wanting to get their way. I think we're seeing this. So that is of the nature. That is part of the nature of this full moon. And what I like to do when looking at this kind of full moon is to look at it from a sort of X-ray perspective, which is to look at the full moon from the point of view of the 90-degree dial. To the 90-degree dial, it shows all the conjunctions, oppositions, and squares as conjunctions, and all the semi-squares and sesquiquadrates as oppositions. And so remember, there's Sun semi-square Uranus. So if we put that on a 90-degree dial, we'd expect to see the Sun and the Moon together, and we'd expect it to be opposition Uranus. So let me just show you what the full moon chart looks like from the perspective of the 90-degree dial. There we go. So that's a 90-degree dial. Don't panic. It might look a bit unfamiliar. So we're going to put this arrow on the full moon. So there's the sun and the moon. They are together, and there you can see it's opposition Uranus. So that gives us a hint that this full moon is, potentially quite dramatic. It's potentially about violent and revolutionary events, and we can see some of the midpoints that it's on. You see, we can see all the symmetries here, these faint red lines. But the symmetries that I'm interested in is there is this full moon. We've got the Hades Aries. It's on the Hades Aries midpoint. So the new moon is on the Hades Aries midpoint. So Hades Aries is about Aries is about the world at large. Hades is about crime and death and destruction. And so we've got North Node on the Hades Aries midpoint. And I think that does indicate that it is a difficult full moon, that we may actually, because remembering full moons are about seeing the truth, we may see the truth of particular destructive events. And so that may be one way of looking at it. So going back to the regular chart, just to show you what I mean about the you see there is the there is the full moon, and so we can see the full moon on the. You see, there's a dial. I don't know if you can see this. This is a sort of list of all the midpoints with the full moon. There's the moon at 5 degrees 7 Libra, Sun 5 degrees 7 Aries, and there you see that's the Hades Aries midpoint that this full moon is on. And of course there's Uranus, so this full moon is on Uranus. So we have Uranus on the full moon, Uranus on the sun moon midpoint, Uranus on the Hades Aries midpoint. Now, to give you an idea about what it means for Hades on the Aries midpoint, let me just go to Witter, Alfred Witter, Rules of Planetary Pictures, a book I recommend you buy if you're into midpoints, and just to see what he says about Aries and Hades, what the general principle of Aries and Hades is. So Aries, Hades. He's quite grim about this. Aries, Hades is the principle: general poverty, general misfortunes, tribulations, plagues, coal mines, sad public events. And then he says about the sun and the moon on it: moon, depressed mind, miners, if you're a miner, it would seem, be careful, losses of the people, the sun being impoverished because of the general existing conditions, catastrophes. It seems that Witter is talking about mining accidents. I'm not suggesting it's going to be a mining accident, I don't know, but it's if you are a coal miner, you perhaps have to be a bit careful with this. And then Uranus on the Aries Hades midpoint, negligence resulting in loss of life. So you're getting a picture about this full moon. It's not good, and it is an eclipse. But the problem is when you're dealing with an eclipse, you're saying, where in the world is it going to have an impact? But you can use astrocartography, and I do use astrocartography. I try to suggest places where things might happen. It doesn't often work out particularly well. I mean, I'll just give you an idea by looking at this full moon from an astrocartography perspective. So let's just put up a map of the world and try to work out where this full moon might have its maximum impact. So you see this yellow line here? These are all the places where the sun is on the ascendant and the moon is on the descendant. So you can see it's the west tip of Africa. That would be, there is the Canary Islands. There's sort of Mauritania. My geography is a bit poor for this part of the world. But so perhaps there's stuff going on Western Africa. Oh, I should know. Is that Mauritania? Yeah, my apologies for my poor West African geography. So these are places that might be impacted by this full moon. Another place is where you've got the full moon right on the full moon here, you can see that goes through Central America, going through Mexico, the central United States. Might influence Mexico City. Could have an impact on Mexico, possibly. And a final place is India. You can see the moon line goes through India. Let me just show you the chart for this relocated to India. So let's relocate this full moon to Delhi. So if we relocate the full moon to Delhi, New Delhi, we have 555 Aries on the midheaven. So this full moon may have an impact. There are elections in India quite soon. Big election. I think it's going to be the biggest election ever. And there is already controversy about these elections. I think the Congress Party has complained that what's the ruling party, BJP, the Modi has frozen its funds. And what's his name? Rahul Gandhi is complaining about that. He's the leader of Congress. Have I got that right? I mean, my knowledge of Indian politics is pretty negligible. Maybe India is somewhere to look out for over the next 2 weeks, maybe a month between now and the election. That is certainly something to consider. And finally, I want to look at a few people who may be impacted by this full moon. Now, this full moon picks up on a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction which took place in 1981. There was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on the 24th of July, 1981, which was just before the royal wedding. Now, the royal wedding between Charles and Princess Diana. And I don't know why the royal wedding over 40 years ago is relevant, but for some reason this full moon might make it relevant. I don't know why. I can't imagine. To give you an idea, let's look at the horoscope of someone who was born exactly on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and that was the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. He was born on July the 24th, 1981. He is famous for being quite an authoritarian president. A lot of people love him. He has been very successful in bringing crime down in El Salvador, but at the cost of sending a lot of people to prison. And of course, he has made Bitcoin one of El Salvador's official currencies. So he's probably quite pleased with Bitcoin going over $70,000, although I think it's come off quite a bit since then. I don't know, is it 65,000 now? I don't know, something like that. But Bukele was born with an exact Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. He was born actually on the exact time of that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is, if you compare his chart with that of the full moon, so we'll put the full moon on the outer ring. So there is Bukele's Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 457 Libra, and exact, no orb, and the moon is the full moon is exactly on his Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, exactly. And I know Jupiter-Saturn is not a personal point, but he is the president of El Salvador, and his chart may reflect what is going, may reflect El Salvador, the country he rules. So it's possible through Bukele that this full moon has an impact on El Salvador, and so he has to be careful. The country has to be careful. I don't know who are the country's enemies. I suppose you could say a lot of people aren't happy with what they're doing with perhaps with Bitcoin. They're not happy with how he's reduced crime. So I would have advised Bukele to be very careful over the next month with this full moon hitting his Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And even then, we might be expecting some stuff going on in his country with this full moon, this A-pulse eclipse. Someone else, I'm not going to spend long on this, is Bill Gates. Bill Gates has got his midheaven at 4 degrees 52 minutes Aries. He's also got moon at Aries. So this full moon is exactly on Bill Gates's midheaven. There could be events over the next few weeks that put him into that attract people's attention, that make him newsworthy, possibly not for good reasons. And it kind of, this full moon impacts, because I know it's not exactly on it, but he's got Mars in Libra, Moon opposition Aries, and so I just think this full moon, might impact him, and I don't think in a fortunate way. And I think Bill Gates has to be a little bit careful about his public image, over the next month. Someone else who might be affected by it is the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. Olaf Scholz has Mars at 5 degrees 12 Aries. This full moon may put Olaf Scholz under a considerable amount of pressure. I mean, he is Chancellor. I suppose you're thinking about the war in Ukraine. Germany just keeps going on, doesn't it? But Mars is about assertion. It's perhaps about the military. I mean, I know I don't think he's not head of state. I think there's a president who's head of state, but so it's not perhaps his chart. It's not necessarily the chart of Germany, but still, it has an impact on Germany. And that full moon is about awareness about the limits of what he can do, perhaps the limits of what Germany can do. I know they've just sent another $500 million to Ukraine, but there is a limit, isn't there? And perhaps events in Ukraine are going to have an impact on him. Maybe more about German German politics, his own personal life, but he's someone to watch over the next month. Then there is Nancy Pelosi. It's not quite as close. This full moon but Nancy Pelosi has her sun at 6 Aries. This full moon is on Nancy Pelosi's sun. The sun could be about the men in her life, her husband, Joe Biden, maybe, her president. But full moon on her sun may be an issue for her. When we're talking about the full moon on her sun, remember when I was talking about Bukele and Gates, it's not just the fact they got the full moon on their sun. It's because the Uranus is tied up with this full moon, which makes it even more difficult. But Nancy Pelosi has this full moon on her sun, so that might impact her work and her profile. If you're interested in Nancy Pelosi, you can perhaps think about how it might have an impact on her. And finally, there is Meghan. Here's Meghan's chart. Meghan was born on August the 4th. She was born, when was so the royal wedding was on July the 29th of 1981. So Meghan was born on a bit after the royal wedding. Born very close to Bukele. And so Meghan has a conjunction between Moon, Jupiter, and Saturn. It's a big part of who she is. And this full moon hits Meghan. Okay, you could say it also sextiles her Mercury. Maybe that's good. But I think this full moon is quite dramatic for Meghan. Because, Uranus is involved as well. It's going to shake things up for her. On her Saturn, I think she is going to become aware perhaps of her limitations. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, I think it also has an impact on her age. She's feeling that this is her generation, but also she's aware of time passing. But, it's very difficult to know what's happening in Meghan's life because she obviously keeps things, she only tells the world what she wants them to hear. But I would not have thought this would be easy, her having this apulse eclipse hitting her moon, Saturn, Jupiter conjunction. It may be something will come to light, or she will have a realization that is really quite difficult for her. Could it be about Harry? I'm not saying necessarily. It's just going to be something, and she's not going to be happy about it, I don't think. Though, I suppose on a positive note, there's a realization, full moon on her moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and then it does sextile her Mercury. So I suppose she will have ideas. She's always got ideas. She'll have thoughts about how she can respond to it. But over the next month, keep an eye on Meghan, see how this apulse eclipse impacts her. And that's it for the full moon. As I said, I don't think it's a particularly good full moon. I think it actually looks difficult. And if you take the view that it's on the Hades Aries or Aries Hades midpoint, it really could be quite dangerous. And if you are a miner, if you take a coal miner or any mining anything else, then maybe be extra careful with that. That's it. That's the full moon. Thank you for bearing with me, and if you enjoyed this video, I would be grateful if you were to indicate that you liked it. I think there's a like button somewhere, and if you're not subscribed, I would be, of course, grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again very soon.